The Honourable Member for Launceston.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, I speak today about a very special tourist destination on Launceston's doorstep. The Cataract Gorge, and in particular a series of talks which provide participants with an insight into the many features and history surrounding this stunning Tasmanian icon. Entitled Gorgeous Walk and Talk, the specially designed guided tours, which depart from the Basin Cottage within the gorge, feature on the first Wednesday of each month and are hosted by 15 volunteers from the Launceston community who have a passion and extensive knowledge of this area. The volunteers impart to participants stories of significant events and people, a history of the gorge, its unique geological features and connections with the Aboriginal culture, as well as identifying the abundance of flora and fauna that can be found. The Gorgeous Walk and Talk tour includes a visit to the site of the first hydroelectric power station in Australia, the Duck Reach turbine-driven power station. The Launceston City Council originally commissioned the power station in 1893, and this amazing feat of construction was completed in 1895, giving Launceston the distinction of being the first city south of the equator to be lit by electricity generated by water power.
Right idea.
It was the provider of electrical power to Launceston for 40 years, in addition to running the municipal tramways, pumping water and wastewater services. After the Great Flood of 1929, the power station was rebuilt and became the Hydroelectric Trevellyn Power Scheme in 1955. Over 25 years later, it was then suggested that the power station become a museum, and in March 1957 it was offered to the Launceston City Council to avoid it falling into a state of disrepair. But it was not until some 20 years later when the National Conservation Study suggested that the building could be used as a museum. In 1995, on the centenary of its first opening, the power station was made weatherproof, the suspension bridge restored and the building reopened as a museum. The site is now an interpretation centre. Another aspect of the built environment within the gorge is the Basin Cottage, which was previously named the First Basin Caretaker's Cottage and is situated on the western side of the Gorge Reserve and accessed from Basin Road. Within the cottage you'll find a pictorial history of the Gorge Reserve, as well as some of the developments and events that have shaped Launceston's history. An exhibition space is also provided for use by artists or associated groups relevant to the gorge. Mr President, the Cataract Gorge is also comprised of first and second basins, which are large bowls with cliff surfaces that boast vertical and horizontal fractures that house natural waterfalls, pools and cascades. It's truly a beautiful place to visit. The pathway along the cliff face was constructed in the 1890s, taking 8 years to complete, and has views of the South Esk River. The King's Bridge, which crosses the gorge, was floated into position in 1867. The first basin boasts walking trails through gardens, lookouts and a swimming pool with restaurant and cafe facilities. Spanning the gorge is a scenic chairlift built in 1972 and is 457 metres long. The central span at 308 metres is believed to be the longest single chairlift span in the world. Located in the first basin near the cafe is the stone shelter where the Gorgeous Walk and Talk native plant tour begins. And many may remember the famous basin concerts where the stone shelter was used as a bit of a stage. The tour is a very popular annual spring walk conducted by Roy and Louise Scabo. Over 200 native species feature within the gorge, and during the walk, Roy and Louise identify many of these native species, as well as many of the species of fauna including peacocks, wallabies, potoroos, fairy wrens, bandicoots, quails, snakes, and over 70 different species of birds, including 9 which are endemic to Tasmania. Other gorgeous walk and talk tours include a study of the geographical attractions which make it one of the most unique in Australia, and a mini Beasts of the Gorge tour which features early evening. Tamer NRM's program coordinator, Greg Lundstrom's Mini Beast tour, also includes an interactive hands-on session using macroinvertebrates to assess river health and quality. He talks about where they like to hide and what they like to eat. The City of Launceston is not only fortunate to have such a unique asset, which is also a tourist mecca, but dedicated volunteer community members who are willing to extol its virtues to those who visit. Mr President, in conclusion, I'd like to acknowledge these volunteers and the time and energy they put into educating the community and visitors about the gorge, a Tasmanian icon.